So John, if you just want to do me a favor and just introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, of course. First, Aaron, thanks for the chat, man. I was looking forward to this. Thanks for having me on. So yeah, John Summers with the Association of Equipment Manufacturers, so AEM. So I'm our vice president, responsible for our what we call our CE sector. So that's primarily construction and utility. I guess we get into a little bit of mining. There's always kind of the question of where does forestry fit? Like you're harvesting trees or land clearing is kind of construction, right? But yeah, if you know AEM, we have about 1,100 member companies. So anything from like the whole good OEMs through portable like hand tools and trailers, and then component suppliers, which is pretty self-explanatory: engines, cabs, tires, and then service providers. Like companies like Ken Cook are the ones there that provide services to our members or to the industry. Yeah, so a lot of people know us. I couldn't let you be the only guy in the hat, right? So I put a Conexpo Coneg hat on. So obviously we own and run, own and produce, I guess is probably the right word, a few different trade shows. So Conexpo Coneg being the big one every 3 years in Vegas. Also a show called Utility Expo, which is focused on the utility industry and utility infrastructure. It's every 2 years in Louisville. Co-own and produce a show called World of Asphalt that moves around. Obviously, again, the names of some of these things are pretty explanatory, right? Asphalt, utility. Yeah. But yeah, and then we do a lot of other just services for the industry, whether it's market data or technical standards, regulation work, advocacy work. Yeah, I mean, my role really is to understand areas where we could provide our members more value. And also by doing that, it's understanding the industry and, their dealers, their end customers, and kind of where the industry, I guess, competitors or not even competitors, just multiple companies can work together to make the industry better, more efficient, attract more workers, all the above, right? So, yeah.
Very cool. So that's actually one of the key things I kind of wanted to talk to you about was in the industry today, it's kind of hard to bring in, at least that's the complaints we're hearing, is that it's hard to bring people into the specific industry, into construction or agriculture and things like that. What do you think are some of the ways that AEM or what you guys are able to do to recruit more people, or what are people looking to do to bring people on board, or what are you guys trying to do right now to bring people on board for operators, technicians, or even just manufacturers in general, becoming a manufacturer even in this space and things like that as well?
Yeah, I like how you kind of separated those, right? So there's the people that our members need working in their, just call it the manufacturing facility. That could also be just, people working in marketing in the office or whatever like that, right? But it's working for the equipment OEMs. And then there's kind of after the machine leaves the factory, everybody that deals with it, right? So that could be dealer, contractor, operator, technician, foreman, all those roles, right? So, yeah, it's a problem. I mean, there's a shortage. I mean, I think everybody hears all the numbers thrown out. I think it was last year somebody said the construction industry was short 600 and some thousand people or whatever, and obviously that kind of ebbs and flows, and different roles are in more of a need. I mentioned technicians. I think that's the biggest challenge right now, like just in general, because everybody wants their equipment up and running. I mean, even if it doesn't have a problem, there's still all the preventative routine maintenance that needs to be done, and who's tackling that, and whether it's technician at the end user, at the contractor, or the dealer. Yeah, I always kind of tell this story of a friend of mine told me this happened to him, and it reminded me that it also happened to me. But when I was in high school, right around the turn of the century, which is kind of funny to say, but like when I was graduating high school at that time, you basically were presented with two different options, right? It was either you go to college and you get a, call it an office job or become a doctor or whatever that would be, right? Or you work fast food. And those were the only options, right? There was nothing in the middle. Like I was never talked about. And I grew up in small town, Wisconsin, right? Of 2,000 people, where kind of surrounded by farms. I didn't really know anybody that was in the farming world, but I mean, obviously there's construction and there's stuff everywhere, and it was that was never talked about. Like kind of the trades work was just not talked about at all.
I mean, there's tons of degree programs even in those fields though too,
stuff, right? Yeah. And it was which is all, it's a good point, right? So I mean, that's even silly. Like even if they said have to go to a 4-year school. Like there's still construction management degrees and all the stuff like that. Like, right. But it was always, you know, kind of the stuff that I always say, like you need schooling for. I said doctor or lawyer or whatever that would be. Right. And then
kind of
otherwise it was business, right? It was that or, you know, work retail or fast food. And it just always kind of irritates me because like you never, as a young 16, 17, maybe 18-year-old, you know, you're not really, at least you weren't really presented with all the options. So I went to college, you know, but I think that's shifting a little bit, right? And I think, you know, social media is really helping with that, and, you know, kind of showcasing, whether it's home building or heavy construction or landscaping or whatever. I'm just thinking of things that use equipment, right? You know, all that space of that, you know, kind of showcasing what jobs are out there and the technology and all the cool stuff. I think that workforce is a tough thing though, because it's really local. So we always kind of encourage, you know, our members that regardless of role they're hiring, right? If it's a, you know, kind of in the trades or, you know, hands-on, right? A welder or painter or whatever it would be. It's you got to work with your local tech schools, get in the high schools, do career fairs, do some kind of demonstration. I don't think there is, besides something that could have an impact from like the governmental policy space, meaning like, you know, legal immigration or immigration reform or something like that, right? I don't think there's like a national campaign that can be done that would have a big enough impact, right? So
no, I agree. You know, for me, and I'm only about probably 10 years older than you. In my generation, I grew up in New York, and where I grew up in New York, I grew up near a farm. My family owned my grandparents owned a farm, and it was about 25, 30 minutes away from where I was in the more urban environment of New York. But they focused heavily on technical in that area. Like that school was all about putting people through what's called BOCES at the program, which is like a local technical school to put these kids through, like electricians. So we produced a lot of union labor is the key word there. It's like it was a lot of that. That was where that money was coming from, was those local apprenticeships and stuff like that from those unions in those areas and stuff like that were really pushing forward on those things. And, you know, in certain areas, it just doesn't exist. They just don't have that. I can tell you right now, that same area in my town does not have it anymore. It's all gone.
yeah,
None of it exists anymore. The school program doesn't exist anymore. All that is completely been disbanded.
Yeah. So just thinking, like you said, 10 years older or whatever like that, around that time. I mean, I think in like I'm just trying to think back to like school, middle school, high school. Like I think we had, you know, like a shop class or small engines class and stuff like that. But it wasn't like that was it. It was like you went and did that, and you're like, here's how you change oil, or it was probably a little bit more than that. But like that's it, and there was no thought of continuing that, right? Which is, so I wonder if I was probably right in the beginning of the phase out, right? So they probably removed the kind of what's after that.
The interesting, where we live in Wisconsin, we actually picked it because it would have the local schools have a technical program. My kids that are in middle school right now are going through like small engine repair.
Awesome.
They're going through basic electrical, right? Robots, things like that. A lot of that STEM type stuff. And it's awesome, even wood shop and things like that. Like it's sponsored by like Snap-on, like, so Snap-on's like bringing us tools all the time and stuff like that, which is cool. It's obviously a way to market, get people like, hey, I use Snap-on tools, and keep going that place. So I mean, it's great that the manufacturers are obviously helping and assisting. They know there's a gap there. But yeah, I mean, and the high school program that they'll go to, hopefully if we're still here, has a lot of that stuff for automotive and things like that. So I think my kids will have more of an option that like I had kind of. But yeah, that's not normal. That's just not normal.
Kind of got brought back then, right? I mean, it was probably was I don't know, pick a day, like 20 years ago. Did it start coming back a little bit, right? I feel like there was probably a 20-year, maybe a little bit longer gap of where all that stuff was removed, and yeah.
Yeah, I think we just got to bring it into every school program, or give people like maybe more community center type stuff to where we can learn that stuff. Even in my age, I'm 47, right? So 47 years old, and I know how to change my oil, but that's about it. Like, and that's terrible. I should know how to do more things on my car. And now with the cost of like getting things fixed in these days and stuff like that, my father, if I told him like, hey, Dad, I need to get new brakes, he's like, of course, she's going to do it yourself, right? Like he'd be mad that I was taking it to a shop to get done.
Yeah.
Versus what I do, which is have somebody else that's a better professional and have them take care of it.
I
But
think
the
that's
cost has gone up. Yeah,
Yeah.
just so much.
And so you're only like 3 years older than me, so don't date
Okay.
yourself too much. There you go. Just to clarify that, I'm not that young. I mean, anyway.
Sure.
I have a hat on, but there's nothing underneath it.
Yeah, me neither.
There you go. Way to go. Good haircut.
How do you get a technician to get out there if there's no proper education and process in place and people to be able to take care of it? And the dealers are struggling just trying to get people out there. I don't know if it's a cost, if it's they're not paying enough. I know in the automotive industry, it's definitely there's not paying enough. That's the difference there. But here's the thing. I know that the heavy equipment industry is taking people from the automotive industry because they're not paying enough and heavy is paying more. So I don't know what that looks like or what that solution is for that.
Do you think it's also like, like let's say you're younger and thinking, hey, I like repairing stuff. I'm going to kind of go into the technician space, right? Do you think it's like availability, like what you learn on, right? Because I mean, you can easily get an old car, right, and kind of tinker around with it and do whatever you want for minimal money. I mean, I can't even go buy a 20-year-old wheel loader for a reasonable amount of money. So I think I wonder if it's just exposure, right? Well, I'm saying why people go into automotive first, right? Or kind of why that, and that's still short, right? But
I mean, within walking distance of my house, I have 7 dealerships in walking distance of my
more
house.
Availability, right? Not even owning and doing it yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to like a Bobcat or a John Deere dealership or something like that, it's a bit of a haul from here, for one thing. But also, I mean, I'm in an urban environment where it's a walking area, right? It's not I don't live in an area where I have lots of land and things to dig and stuff like that. And my kids, luckily, I take them to places and to things, and they get to learn about that stuff because I think it's important because it's what I do and it's the way I was raised on the farm and stuff like that. But it's just maybe it is that, but I don't know. I think the school system should have that kind of stuff available for people to be able to try, or again, if we can create more community center places where like just learn how to change a brake or how to change your oil or how to change spark plugs. Those are, I mean, because everybody owns a car, not everybody owns a truck, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just it's hard to understand. Yeah. I don't know. We'll probably never figure this out. And the truth is, hopefully and this is one of the things I hope for genuinely is that we build robots that are able to actually do some of the stuff where we can educate them to be able to fix and replace its own components and parts. And I've seen some of them already that can do that. I mean, when you have a machine out in a field and the closest dealership's 500 miles away, I don't know how you get that thing fixed for that person at an effective rate. And it seems like a big gap and a big problem that we need to try to figure out and how to resolve. At least that's the conversations I have with people.
I mean, the remote job site, whether you're miles away or you're, in a mine or something like that, like just getting a person down there, right? Even if it's not a long drive to get there. And I think you got to figure out like what's the, what things you can automate or have a robot do. And it's like, where does the value, the human value still come in, right? Because I mean, if you ever talk about robots and stuff like that, people are like, oh, we're going to take jobs. And I'm like, well, you're just going to be different, right? I mean, there's still got to be some of that stuff that, is the human touch or, where you're adding value that you can't really automate, right?
I've been spending a lot of time in machine learning for probably 6 or 7 years now, and pretty heavily invested with different companies and with different schools that I've worked with to educate myself on robotics. I can tell you my job won't exist in a few years. Like what I personally do will not exist, and it shouldn't, is the truth. Like if we can automate the silly stuff, like in things that I do, I think that's a great thing. And in fact, I work every day to replace myself. And I think I talked to you about this. Like I have a bot that takes my meetings now, right? I have a bot that reviews my emails and sends me like a full a breakdown of what happened for the day or what I need to get. What is the most important thing I need to take care of first? Like as some examples, I even have it so like I'm Con Expo is an example, right? I know I'm going to Con Expo. I literally told in my agent tool, so I said, "Hey, I'm going to Con Expo. Please book flights, hotel, put it all together." And went through and organized, put all that stuff together for me, gave me a budget, gave me what it looked like, and then like, are you okay with me moving forward to purchasing these things? Then it purchased them for me. So like, it's a lot of the stuff. I mean, these type of things are easily replaced. I think it's a little harder to replace somebody to change a screw,
of course,
and things like that right now. But right now, right, like in these humanoid robots I've seen, I think us training them to do these, to go into a mine or go into an area that is very unsafe, and we can remove a human from that element. I'm all about that. Whatever we can do from a safety standpoint to remove people from areas that even from just simply breathing in the air is a safety hazard.
Right.
And one of the cool things, I even watched Gecko Robots. I don't know if you know who they are, but they literally developed machines that crawl up in the inside of the nuclear towers to clean the towers, and they go through and like inspect the tower to make sure there's no leaks or no things like that, or repair damage. It's amazing. Like, that used to be a person, like a team of people that used to do it. Now it's a robot. And by the way, I don't think there's a single person that's mad that it's a robot doing that,
right?
Because it's less exposure. It's it's a much safer environment. And I've even seen some of these drones the other day where they're actually replacing light bulbs on the wind turbines and things like that as well. So like, instead of having somebody have to climb up these incredibly high towers, so I'm fine with it being removing a human from that element. You still need somebody to operate the drone, at least for now, and things like that. But
I think if you think about it for two reasons, right? And you mentioned safety. I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, let's stop, putting people in potentially unsafe environments, right? If we can stop, right? And then the other thing is just like we talk about the shortage of technicians and operators and stuff like that. I mean, if you save some of your people to do some of the other stuff, right? I mean, it's not like we're at capacity, and if you automate some stuff, then what are these people going to do, right? I mean, there's plenty of stuff for them. I mean, it's kind of like, I've used the analogy of like, having a vacuum robot, like a Roomba. It's not like, since I'm not vacuuming now, I'm just super bored at home. Right. I mean, it's like I'm doing something else that's more worth my time than vacuuming up dog hair and my kids' crumbs constantly.
And there's still dishes, right? I mean,
right.
Somebody still got to load the dishwasher, right?
Right.
Somebody still got to load the washing.
Plenty of other stuff to do.
Yeah. Somebody, and to be honest, it's not like that. Roomba can also get up on a couch,
right? Exactly.
Vacuum all that stuff up. Yeah. No, you brought up a good thing regarding safety and things like that. So I sit on the committee for the AEM Product Safety and Stewardship Conference. One of my favorite things to attend and go to, and I speak at most times as well in different things. So regarding safety, like what new standards are there? How can people learn about what's coming out from a standard standpoint, or new updates and things like that to make things easier? Because as some of the things I'm also talking to is a lot of these startup manufacturers that don't even know their standards, and they're building a autonomous skid steer loader or something like that. And I'm like, I have to inform them. Look, I mean, that's a good way to keep my job, I guess, but like, how do we get more of those people that they're coming into the manufacturing space? How do we get them more involved so they understand that there's tons of regulations to make sure that they're going to be successful? Because we want these startups to be successful.
Right. So I'll kind of give an AEM plug here, and then I'll talk more general, right? So, I mean, obviously, if we have a whole, what we call our safety and product leadership service area department at AEM that deals with all of this stuff, right? So, I mean, it's like our members attend some committee meetings. There's a general one for agriculture and for construction separately, and they basically run through all the standards that are being updated, things to watch out for, new standards which could not evolve into a regulation, but a regulation could like point at that standard, right? But especially if it's safety related. I always kind of use the example of, years, I mean, I don't know this, right before my time, right? Like an elevating work platform, probably had guarding, maybe not at all. Maybe you could just walk off the edge, right? And now there's a standard on how high that needs to be, and, harness and all the stuff like that, right? So, I mean, there's some of this stuff that's depending on who your standards development organization or standardizing body is. So like in the US, sometimes it's ANSI, it's ISO internationally, right? I mean, it's like, you got to kind of just figure out what technical committee kind of has jurisdiction over whatever product you're involved with, right? I mean, and AEM committees can help with that. The kind of more general point of this, and I think this is something we'll see, and I was asked to few weeks ago, like what's the trend we're going to see? What's a big thing we're going to see at Con Expo next year, right? And I think in 2023, it was a lot of alternative power. So think battery electric machines, there was some hydrogen stuff, a lot of hybrid, or there should continue to be more hybrid stuff. I think we're going to see a lot of, I got to figure out a better way to like word this, but a lot of machines that are built essentially from the ground up around the technology versus it being called an add-on, right? So especially when you get into safety, there's been camera systems and proximity sensors and all sorts of stuff, right? And this isn't really how this works, but I mean, you basically take it and put a screw through it and screw it onto the back of your wheel loader, and then it would make a noise, right? And it's not fully integrated into like the whole machine ecosystem. So it's kind of like the Tesla thing, right? I mean, it's like the car developed around the battery and software. So I think you're going to start seeing that kind of move into the construction, I guess, and agriculture space of kind of the technology or software first, and the machine purpose built around that to incorporate a lot of these other additional safety systems, automation systems. But to your point of the startups, right? I mean, a lot of those machines, I mean, autonomous systems have been sort of an add-on to an existing machine, or retrofit an existing machine, right? I know there's some companies that are working on maybe more on the battery electric thing, built a whole machine from the ground up around that whole powertrain, if you want to call it that, right? And I think it's a cool turning point, because I think it provides two things: probably a better integrated, potentially more safe system, but also a better operator experience, right? Or a better user experience, because it's thought from the ground up, right?
Sure. And so when you're talking about like not just electrification, I assume you're talking about like hydrogen and other types of
yeah. We kind of say alternative power, like alternatively powered machines, which is kind of beyond the diesel, which is still here to stay, and in my mind we'll never see it go away in our lifetime, right? I mean, the diesel internal combustion engine, like, I mean, there's a lot of need from a fuel source, but also from just a power density and everything like that. Like it's not going away, but there are good use cases for the other powers.
Yeah, the ones I'm liking the most so far are the hybrid model. So essentially the generator, right? So you still have the engine as a generator for the electrification. And most of the reason I like that is so that you have a longer runtime is one reason. But to be honest, like sometimes you do need more power than what the electrical system is set for the batteries that are in there. So it allows you to run over and get it from the other areas. I do love the electrification for like things like the removal of hydraulics and like be able, like some of that transition. I think that is a huge improvement overall, but we're just still early about like how much can you put into it without killing it, and having that generator, I think, makes the bigger difference in that process. The only problem is these batteries aren't really still, unfortunately, I don't feel they're tested properly enough to be in these heavy equipment pieces yet to be really expanded out big enough yet. Whereas in the auto industry, they've had, almost 20, 30 years now at this point. We've only got like 6 years on the heavy equipment side that's really been doing it. Some people are doing it great, like Volvo, and I think Bobcat's doing a great job with theirs as well. But I just haven't seen anybody really be able to have a machine that runs consistently nonstop and have a good proper safety process in place, because a lot of things need to change once they if that machine catches fire, what needs to happen is very different than and making sure all those people are educated around it. So it's the training and the safety around that is a big concern for me still.
Yeah, I think it's the kind of back to my point of, I was talking more on safety systems like camera systems or proximity sensors and detection, right? But I mean, like, same thing to do with like a battery, right? I mean, it's not just like lift the diesel engine out, put a battery in there, hook it up, right? I mean, I know it's more complicated than that, but like that works-ish, right? I mean, we've seen that kind of work, but I mean, I think as companies get more familiar and the battery technology improves and all of that, we'll see that happen. But to your point of that's a prime example of where we need to like upskill these technicians, right? Because I mean, it's you pull a Comm mini excavator in a shop and quote unquote pop the hood, and you're like, well, that's not an engine. What, should I touch this blue wire? I don't know. Right? It's kind of like, how do how does the skills need to change from people working in the machines or just general general safety information, right? I mean, like,
yeah. And here's the thing: if it's a piece of heavy equipment and they're out in the field with a battery like that, here's the thing: when it's an auto, it's a car, they're trained and they have like hooks to grab the other person to pull them off the batteries. Like there's literally like systems in place for the technicians, like where a second technician's there to make sure the person get pulled away, because they'll get stuck and kill themselves, like get electrified by these things. So like if you're out in the field and you have this thing, do they know you need two people? Do they know you need these extra, do you have the proper equipment to even touch it to start the process? That's just a big undertaking. And I think we're at least a decade away on the heavy equipment side from that even being able to be done in a more mass understanding and availability and stuff like that. At least maybe I'm wrong, but from what I've seen so far, and you start talking to people, like when a fire happens or something like that, they don't know what to do. In fact, the truth is we've now gotten to the point where even in the auto side is finally, because I work with the NFPA, the National Fire Prevention Association, as well on stuff. And I work heavily on making sure I understand all those standards on these things and stuff like that as well. And if a car catches fire right now, they have like certain things where they're like shooting these injectors that go and like basically pops the battery and shoots this foam that blocks it out. But it's also like if you and they're like, oh well, now you just dump water all over it and you just keep shooting water on it. Well, you're gonna shoot water for 3 days. Now you got a chemical runoff with that water as well. So like where's that water go? Is it going into the ground? Oh, you may have just poisoned this entire ground facility. Like there's so many things that we're just not thinking about all the other steps behind it on this at this current time. So that's why I like the hybrid method, because at least it'll take some of that away of that process. But I am absolutely in love with the hydrogen stuff, the things I've seen from that, and the stuff that JCB is putting out. I'm kind of blown away with some of their engines, and that I think has huge potential in the near future. And again, it won't be as hard as transitioning somebody into that to fix it, or even just to operate to be safe around and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, JCB I think was the first to release that hydrogen internal combustion engine, so it looks like a normal diesel engine, kind of, right? And the challenge with that is, I mean, you could argue that this was the challenge with unleaded fuel, before we were born, right? It's just the infrastructure and availability of it, right? I mean, there's also, it depends what your goal is, right? Because I think companies need to figure out the why behind, like, I don't mean manufacturers. I mean, like if I'm a contractor, like why am I buying a piece of electric, hydrogen, whatever equipment? Am I operating indoors or somewhere where noise is a concern? Awesome. Am I doing it to like reduce my carbon footprint? Also awesome. But like, there's other ways you can do that, right? So, there's been a lot of talk the last couple of years, at least in some people I've talked to, about renewable diesel, right? And same kind of challenge with that is like, there's a bunch in the beginning of the year, and then the availability kind of goes away. And, it's kind of like, where is it?
So you're talking about like biodiesel?
It's the difference between bio and renewable. Okay. Yeah, but still just a different makeup of your diesel fuel, right? So but yeah, I mean, it's like the call it regular diesel, right, is kind of available everywhere. But if you're I think I was actually talking to a contractor in Texas, I believe, and they said they tried to use renewable diesel across multiple machines in their fleet, and because it's basically just swap it out, right? And then they said, and then a lot of the stations ran out of it because there wasn't enough production of it, and they were like, okay, now we're back, right? Which is okay, but that's not like a current long-term solution. So like the infrastructure, same thing. I mean, it's like hydrogen. Where are all the hydrogen filling stations? A lot in California.
Almost all count for. There's one here. There's one here in Wisconsin.
I did not know that.
It's in New Berlin. It's FedEx, FedEx building by our office in New Berlin. They have one hydrogen fuel station that's specifically for a FedEx truck.
I did not know that. That's interesting. Yeah. The last that I heard is there was like 50 some in the nation, and like 48 of them are in California or something silly like that.
Right? There's literally like 2 others. Like because so Honda, there's only 3 manufacturers. I mean, Honda's has had a car for a while.
Yeah.
But it's not sold here in America. But I think they did bring a couple here. But the only reason again that they have it in New Berlin is FedEx has a truck that they're testing out. And so they put in they need a place to be able to fill it up. So
which is awesome. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to see less. Right. I mean, it's just kind of like but that's kind of one of the points that, AEM's put out a couple different, what we call like position papers, one on just reducing emissions through call it diesel internal combustion engines, right? And then the alternative power thing. And it's like one of the challenges is just availability, infrastructure availability, right?
Sure.
So, harvesting some trees in middle of nowhere, Oregon, like how am I getting almost any fuel there, right? I mean, it's easier to drive in a diesel truck to refuel it than anything else. So, but yeah, it's something to watch.
Yeah. That I'm going to bring up one key thing here that ends up being the main conversation that with every single person I'm talking to right now in the heavy equipment industry, and that's very obviously tariffs. So the reason I'm saying that is because my thought was that's the one thing I think if like with the tariffs that are currently in place, if they were taking that money to invest in this infrastructure we're talking about, like that money like goes into the infrastructure where we're now going to get the ability for hydrogen, electrification, these other things, like take that money to go to that, I'd be like, oh, that makes sense to me. And we could, yes, then now, because now the manufacturers aren't willing to invest because the money's going to come back to them if they're investing in that possibility and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on this from a tariff standpoint? Because that was literally at the AEM annual, that was the conversation everybody was telling me and wanted to talk about. And not everybody was negative on it, by the way, as well. It was surprising. A lot of people were just simply, we just need direction on what's going on here, what to do.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a good thing because will bring manufacturing back? Because some of it kind of did, and it is working kind of somewhat, but I don't know if it's truthfully actually the truth. I don't know. What are your thoughts? And if this is too touchy of a subject, feel free to just.
No, I'll make some general comments just because, there's some obviously like easy information to share, and then maybe some of my thoughts. But like, I was actually on a call earlier today, and I said the word of the year for 2026 is interoperability, right? Because I think it's just whether that's data or multiple different brands of machines working together. So the word of the year in 2025 was uncertainty, right? Or I guess the last couple of years, right? So I think that's the biggest problem with the whole tariff thing, right? Is, whether you have a bid out, total contractor machine is going to cost this, and then all of a sudden the next day it changes if the part's coming off a boat or whatever like that. Like it's just the lack of consistency is probably a challenge, right? And I think somebody said to me once, there's a big difference between uncertainty and lack of clarity. And I thought that was interesting because uncertainty is kind of like, don't know what's going to happen. And then even if you do know what's happening, do you understand it? Right? Because it's like, somebody was telling me a story earlier today, like they manufacture in Canada and they're selling a bunch of attachments into the US. Some of them have a tariff on them, some don't. Why? I'm sure there's a reason, but like nobody knows what that is, right? And if you're buying I'll just make this up, like a snowblower attachment, and it's like no markup because there's no tariff, but then you buy a mulcher and there is, and it's like, as a consumer of that, I'm like, why? What's the point of this, right? So the lack of clarity is a problem. To your question on like bringing manufacturing back here, like I think that's all well and good. The problem is it's just not instant. And I mean, instant even is 6 months. It's not 6 months, right? And
oh yeah, we're talking years, like a decade.
And I think that was one of the things that, I think our members understood that. I don't know who else did, right? They're like, well, just, instead of sourcing this from doesn't matter where, like just fire up something here and create a new component supplier and get it here. And they're like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And then the biggest problem is like, let's say it does work that way. And okay, 6 months, year, 2 years, doesn't matter, right? All of a sudden we have these manufacturing facilities here that are making some of the components, whole machines here, American made or North America made, whatever it is. This just went full circle back to our workforce conversation. Who's working in there, right? It's like, how are we getting all of these other people to work in the facilities here? Like it becomes a workforce.
I don't think it's a lot of people. I don't think it's a people thing though. I think this is where I was bringing up the robots again.
Automation stuff. Yeah, of course.
I think I think, even in our tiny little facility at Ken Cook, we built a lot of automation to, reduce the need of every single human. Also from an error standpoint, to make sure we have consistency and quality in what we're putting in, things like that as well. So, are there still humans that work there? Yeah. Are there still more humans than there were a couple years? Yes, absolutely. Because of growth and things like that as well. Right. But and do we need people to be able to help run and operate those facilities, fix the machines, things like that as well? Yeah. But it's slightly better than data centers, which really hire like 1,000 people to construct something, and then there's no job. There's like 5 people that work in that giant facility. Not to put down, data centers, but I don't really see the point of us putting all this money behind something if you're thinking it's going to invest and make more people. It's not right now. So
It's I might have these numbers off a little bit, but a friend of mine's a electrician in Southeast Wisconsin. So is there 4 like major data centers going up here in Southeast Wisconsin, something like that, right?
Yep. Of the big companies, yes.
Of the big ones, yeah. There's some smaller ones. I think they're still massive, but yeah. He said that a lot of the work he's doing is electrician work in the data centers. So whether that's running like the trunks for the wires or actually wiring everything, whatever. I'm talking like in building, right? Like not power line going to it. He said that if everything goes right now as it is, there's a need for 4,000 electricians in Southeast Wisconsin. He said if you would essentially tap the unions in the area and then all of the like not companies that are, wiring up a Home Depot, right? Or something like that, like more of the commercial, but would do a larger project. He said the current pool is 1,400 people. And I was like, oh, dang, you don't even like, we don't even have
for the state,
the number. We don't even have half the number of what we need, right? And I thought that was like a staggering, realization of that. So then you think about that, what's gonna happen? I mean, I don't know this, but I mean, like, is everything getting built and then it's just gonna sit there and wait? Because that's, I mean, like, we'll get to it when we finish this other job, right? And it's like the kind of fear of that is the same thing as if we do a lot of manufacturing all at once here. It's like, where does the pool come from? And are people just poaching people back and forth? And like, I mean, I totally understand, totally get the whole automation and in our space, it's robotic welding and paint booths, all stuff like that. Like, totally get that, right? But it's
still a great skill. It's a great skill to learn is to weld. I preach it to everybody. Anybody at any age, you should be able to do at least basic welding. It's not a hard class. Spend some time. You put about 20, 30 hours into it. You can do some cool stuff. I still recommend it to everybody. It's a fun.
Have you done it? So you can change your oil and weld? Okay, cool.
I can change my oil, then I know basic spot welding. I was like, that's about it though. I'm not, don't ask me if this is gonna be safe for this person to utilize afterwards. Probably not, no. But I mean, I learned to solder from electrical class and stuff like that when I was a kid. It's just the next level up, right? It's hard. Don't get me wrong.
It's not easy, right? Yeah.
No. But
yeah, I think that just back to that point of like the reshoring or onshoring or whatever, manufacturing more here is like, I think the theory is all good and all that. It's just, it takes a long time and we need to, figure out how to effectively do it and invest in it and then the people to work it. And there's also sort of a discrepancy of, I just learned this, I think at our annual conference, that there's a difference of government subsidies for basically finding land and building a manufacturing facility from the ground up versus retrofitting something that's, call it old, even if it's empty, right?
Sure.
And I think the subsidies for, hey, I found a warehouse and I can, put some machine tools in here. I mean, the cost is less than building a building, but it's still not like just throw it in the budget, right? And I think we need to talk about, or federally talk about.
Yeah, because at a state level, some states are doing a pretty good job. Michigan is doing an excellent job about redoing a lot of their, but they're spending a lot of their state-based money to for those manufacturers to come back in and to do some of those things. Ohio's doing a pretty good job of that too as well. Wisconsin, I mean, I feel like we're just building new buildings. So are we retrofitting anything? I'm like, I feel like everything's a brand new thing here.
There's a lot of, which is good for the construction industry, man.
Yeah,
between that and the 94 east or east and west, like east of our office, expansion. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, around Milwaukee County area.
I mean, our old building for manufacturing on that side, like it's now a storage facility. It's like where people just it's now where people pay, probably making way more money than it ever did as a place for people to store their stuff. That's the retrofitting for that kind of stuff. Because we talked to multiple manufacturers when we sold the building, and one manufacturer came in and they failed within a year because they didn't realize how much money it was going to cost to redo the building and to make that happen. And they're like, oh my god, this was terrible. And then they ended up offshoring it. They ended up unfortunately taking that facility and going to another country and then importing their stuff as well. So
that's actually a really wild case study, right? Because you think about, if a company wants to make something here, right? And they think, okay, we're not going to build a whole building from scratch. We're going to retrofit this thing. Like, they don't even know. And then in that example you use, and they actually ended up taking it out of the country, which is defeating the whole purpose, right? So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do some research, you can look it up on the Ken Gold building. I don't want to tell. I don't want to expose anybody, but
Not throwing anybody under the bus here. Yeah.
but yeah, no, that's unfortunate. But yeah, yeah, you know what? The last thing I'll leave here is that we've got an awesome thing coming up with Con Expo. I guess what are you most excited for with that and what's coming up? Because again, every 3 years, it's one of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show to go to. It's 7 days, I like to say, of just nonstop moving and running around for myself, at least and my team. So, you know, I get probably 20 miles of steps a day every day doing that show. But it's one of my favorite things. So, what are you hoping to get at, or what do you think AEM's hoping to show off at this thing?
Yeah. Also, my favorite thing every 3 years, right? I mean, I just love being around people and seeing new stuff, right? So, I mean, it's interesting because I always kind of wonder, as a general attendee, who hasn't been to the show before, I always wonder what their expectations are, right? Because I feel like people are always overwhelmed, right? Because there's just so much stuff there. But I feel like if you kind of go into it with kind of a plan in mind of things you want to see, then that'll be helpful. But the reason I'm saying all that is because my favorite, I'll tell you about what I'm excited for in a second, but I think what I'm always most excited for is the stuff that you had no idea was going to exist, right? I mean, there's always something there.
Showcases, yeah.
Big product unveiling. It is, you know, you can call it prototype, you can call it like whatever it is. And there's always multiple things that I was like, oh, that's actually super interesting and never thought anybody could come up with that idea, right? Whether that's, you know, new attachment, new, you know, way to operate a machine, you know, remote control, autonomy, different type of fuel, whatever it is, right? And it's always, you know, that stuff. So I'm excited. I'm most excited for the stuff that I don't know, right? I think that's kind of the point. I kind of talked about the whole like machine ecosystem, like the fully integrated, everything like that. I think we'll see some of that. I think we'll see some brand new ground up built machines that are around, call it around the software, even though it's more than that, right? I think that'll be really interesting. I mean, I think you know me well enough. I love people and talking to people and understanding what they do and just hanging out. I think that's the best part. I mean, you get 140,000 people in Las Vegas that are all in the same industry essentially, right? And, you know, even if you're crane operator versus laying asphalt, I mean, you're still job site, right? You're still no construction. So it's like, there's so much stuff that people have in common. And the other coolest thing about this industry is that most of those companies from a equipment buyer thing don't compete, right? So, I mean, there's companies that are doing work in, you know, Canada versus Texas versus Wisconsin or like that. And a lot of the challenges are the same. So it's cool to like, I snoop a lot and I like butt in as I'm walking behind somebody and listen to their conversation, right? But it's cool to hear people kind of talking about their challenges and then sharing that. And somebody's like, you know, I ran into that same thing and here's what we did and blah, blah, even if it's right or wrong. And I think there's so much learning that you can get from just a conversation from somebody you don't know, maybe somebody you connected through on, you know, social media or just was in the same, you know, we have like over 150, I believe, different education sessions that show like, just talk to the people next to you and figure it out, right? I mean, I think that's a lot of the value. I mean, people go into it thinking I'm going to see new machines and all the stuff like that and, you know, talk to the OEMs, but the people there that are doing the same thing you're doing, like I think that's a lot of the value.
So you brought up the idea of people are going to come and just talk to the OEMs, and that's the original reason I was going, was to do that, was because that's where my customers are, things like that, right? But the truth is, I now go because I've made so many friends at these shows of people that are running a, you know, small construction company, or, you know, they're a dealership or something like that I've now connected with, and I get to hang out with them a little bit, and they get to tell me their stories about what's going on or what's happening, and that really helps me inform the OEMs. Like, so I don't need, to be honest, I don't really talk to the OEMs at that conference. I normally make meetings afterwards with them. So like, I'm there to talk to their people that are actually utilizing the equipment, or possibly the education materials that we built or things like that as well. But like, you know, trying to find out, here's where the problems are, here's where you guys are, so I can come back to them and be like, hey, this is what your network is saying, this is what's going on, and these are the problems they're facing, here's how we can help resolve those solutions for you, or just so you know, like, you should probably try to figure out how you can help these groups out, or else you're gonna possibly they're going to switch to a different OEM or something,
Yeah, it's same for me, right? Because a lot of that, in my role, a lot of that, end user contractor challenges, like I try to bring back to our members, right? And say like, hey, you 3, 5, 8 companies, like all make the same, quote unquote, same product, right? And compete, but like, let's all work together on, something to make the end user experience better. I said the word of the year next year is interoperability, right? I think that really is it. I mean, nobody, I'll double negative this, nobody does not have a mixed fleet, right? So, I mean, it's basically like, they should, maybe not nobody, but I mean, like there's always,
most don't,
most don't, right? And especially then if you think about even their fleet, I'm like, if you're working on a, heavy civil project, like you have a subcontractor that's on there, they're going to have something different. I'm actually moderating a panel on Tuesday afternoon of the show on a newer released ISO standard on, I always call it the grade control or machine control interoperability, right? So it's multiple technology providers, multiple, equipment providers, all working the same job site off one plan, grading to plan, through a machine control system. And it's like, why make it more complicated for the end user to have to recreate that in a different system or translate it and all the stuff like that, right? So it's that in-field communication of machines, it's the telematics data getting off multiple brands into one system so you can manage your fleet. I think I mentioned this, I don't remember if we were recording at this time or not, but we had a call with a bunch of attachment manufacturers this morning, and they talked about compatibility with attachments on different machines. And it's like, as a customer, like I would think I would just, want everything to work, right? I know it's not that easy, but it
can be though for some things.
Standardizing some of that stuff,
a bucket's a bucket, right? At the end of the day.
Pretty much. Yeah. Right. I mean, but if you, have a bucket on your job site and then you want to stick it on a different machine, it's not compatible. It's like, then how much downtime do we have to find the other one and all that stuff like that, right? So it's just that the user experience is probably the other thing that I think will really ramp up over the next few years. And I think that'll be talked about a lot in March. Then you get into all the technology stuff. Like I feel like we have to mention AI, and you talk about somebody responding to your emails and booking your flights and stuff like that, right? But I mean, like, where does that pay and where does that play into the job site, right? I mean, if it's normalizing data, analyzing fleet data, that's cool. If it's, I mean, I don't, that I think
operation,
a lot of it's that. I think that's probably going to be one of the areas that is my, thing my first point of thing I see at the show that I was like, had no idea this was even like a thing that could exist, right? I think that you'll see some stuff in that space. So
yeah. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of lucky that people let me see some sneak stuff on there, and I'm blown away at what's coming up for Con Expo and what I'll actually see some fleshed out stuff. I'm super excited for that.
Yeah.
John, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me today.
Thanks,
I can't say thank you enough. If you wouldn't mind, just one more time, just give one more rundown of who you are and who you work for. It's just for the cut out and cut in for Shoe.
Yeah, for sure. So John Summers, I work for Association of Equipment Manufacturers, so AEM, so trade association for manufacturers of equipment, whole goods, components, in the agriculture, primarily construction. So I'm our vice president of our construction and utilities sector. Really try to make the industry a better place.